Welcome to a special edition of the BioCentury This Week podcast. I'm Jeff Cranmer, Executive Editor here at BioCentury, and today we bring you BioCentury This Week from Seoul, where BioCentury and BayHelix are hosting our 5th East-West Biopharma Summit. Today, special guests Ya-Ting Lei, Director of Business Development and Licensing at Merck Group from Germany, and Ruizhe Zhao, VP of Clinical Analytics China at Caidya, are joining VP and Editor-in-Chief Simone Fishburne and Josh Berlin, the illustrious Josh Berlin.
Oh, you got an illustrious this time. It's spreading. Worse. Yeah.
I've noticed that Josh feels a little, a little slighted when Steven, just heaps praise upon you, Simone. So
yeah, I get that a lot. Yeah.
We're going to talk about some of the key takeaways from 3 days of in-depth panel discussions, one-on-one meetings, presenting company presentations, networking, and some very, very bad karaoke last night, of which I was perhaps the guiltiest party. And of course, kimchi in its many delicious forms. Simone, what were your key takeaways?
Well, first of all, Jeff, I just have to ask, because I was not at the session with the karaoke last night, and will I be able to find it on TikTok?
I'm afraid I've been sent several videos already.
Oh,
I know
excellent. This is now part of the record.
Well, we always like to give props to Brian Denker, who's here. He's one of the men who makes our conferences go, and apparently someone's created a compilation of all the songs Brian sang. So hopefully that overshadows whatever horror I did.
All right, well, we'll be playing that on a future podcast, right, Josh?
I think so, and we should give credit, I think, to KGaA Bio, one of our regional hosts. They were certainly better at the karaoke, I think, than the BioCentury team.
That's true.
They had a little more practice, EO and her colleagues.
Shout out to EO, who got me to sing for the first time since the last time I was in Seoul, actually. So, let's dig in here. We've got a lot of great stuff to talk about. Simone, what's top of mind for you coming out of this week?
Well, I think probably top of mind, you got to talk about energy, right? I think that there's just been a tremendous amount of energy here. I want to sort of draw, what we typically do is, of course, draw a few threads that have come in terms of take-homes during this last few days. So I think if I go back to the scene setter, which sort of launched the conference, a few themes came up there that I think we could discuss and that sort of played out over the next few days. So in that scene setter, what we had done was we really wanted to focus on innovation in Asia outside of China. We spend a tremendous amount of time talking about China, right? But, there's really a lot of question about what about the other regions in Asia and what's going on here? And so we've done an analysis looking at deals in the last 2 years from Biotechs in the other territories in Asia. And obviously, maybe not obviously to everybody, but South Korea really by far is the most prolific country after China in the region in terms of doing deals. But, theme number one, Jeff, related to your panel, we'll come back to this, I think, later in the pod, is Japan had a much bigger showing there than I think people typically think of. I think everybody knows, and we'll talk about this, about the strong science in Japan. But the idea, and you've been writing about this, that it's rising as a biotech center is certainly something we're looking at. But let's just come back to, I'll just make a couple more comments here regarding South Korea, because that is where we are. And, the analysis pointed to something that was again borne out through the other conversations. And that's what I call an incredibly high innovation quotient. And so when we looked at the data and the deals, we saw something that we very rarely see. And that is among product deals, there were more first-in-class than not first-in-class, potential first-in-class, assets in there. And when we looked and we dug in, the innovation, there's people are taking target risk with completely new biology, and people are taking modality risk, not in one sort of, monolithic, just antibody structures, but across a range. There were 8 deals with 8 different modalities. And I think that what that taps into that I find very interesting is a need. That is what South Korea and other regions in Asia need to do. They cannot play on me toos and me betters. And so they have to be leaning into innovation. You might call it risk, but it's actually the only path for them is to lean into target risk, biology risk, modality risk. And so for me, that is a hallmark or brand that I think is starting to emerge for sort of Korean biotech. I'm going to stop there right now. I wanted to raise one more thing and then sort of springboard to you. One of the other things that we saw there that I think we've also talked about a lot is collaboration among Asia, well, biotechs within Asia countries. So maybe, you can pick it up from there.
Yeah, Ruizhe, welcome to the program. I was so delighted to have you.
Thank you.
I know there was a few things that really resonated with you. I don't know if you want to jump to Simone's question or just take it from there.
Yeah, I think either working in Asia, out of China, but also globally, because I'm working as a biometrics function, so the topic of generating faster data in Asia interests me a lot. So quote from one of our panelists yesterday that there are only two types of speed is fast and faster.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, which enlightened me a lot. I think, but everyone work in clinical trials as myself, and I think Ya-Ting, that quality is still very important. The data should be reliable. And one new thing I think being bring up in the session yesterday is that the data should be transferable and portable from one country to another, which is very important. Yeah.
So I would like to give some feedback on the in terms of the data transfer topic, right? So in the past few years, our team has been working diligently on the Chinese project. But as you can imagine, there's a strong mandate regarding the personal data policy, and then I think it's very difficult to transfer the data cross-border. So it's always a pain point when we are performing due diligence process, right? And then if we don't see the data, then it's very difficult to see whether the data really have integrity issue or not. So I want to echo your points, right? The data has to be transferable. Otherwise, it's very difficult to check on spot. Yeah. And then you need to fly in the colleagues sitting in the US or in Europe, to fly into specific site. I think that's not very efficient.
True. I think different countries make a lot of effort. For example, Australia is top one for the regulation approval. And for China, we had a lot of effort to improve the edge drug policies. But still, we have a lot of room to discuss about the data privacy across different regions.
Excellent. A lot of love for Australia at the conference here. I know I'm supposed to say something like Aussie, Aussie, oi, oi, oi. Or is that how y'all roll?
Not bad, Jeff. Not bad, Jeff.
Well, I would have really leaned into it had I.
We'll practice that offline.
We shall.
Yeah. So Josh, we've talked a little bit about this. It's a theme at BioCentury. It's a theme in others of our conferences, and that is this real need for speed. I think Korea has been trying for many years, aiming to become a center for clinical trials. It's now got a lot of competition from other countries. The UK is aiming to do that. We've talked about that. In fact, Prague, the Eastern Europe, where we're holding BioEquity Europe. Sure. And so how are you looking at this, Josh, in terms of South Korea's ability to compete, and how important a part of the South Korean kind of draw will that be?
Yeah, thanks for that, Simone. And first off, wanted to just say thank you to our Korea hosts this week, who have just been fantastic and really welcoming. And we've met so many Korea biotech leaders this week that have stories to tell that we think will resonate across the global industry. But yeah, certainly the clinical trial infrastructure here is world class. Some of the KOLs and PIs here are really top notch. Simone, you had I thought a great fireside chat yesterday with Professor B.C. Cho of Yonsei University, one of the top oncology PIs in the world, really. And I do think folks are looking to China certainly for speed and for clinical trial data that helps to get de-risking faster, but there's also a lot of folks that are looking outside of China, and I think certainly Australia, we've heard a lot today and this week, but Korea also, I think, has a major role to play there, primarily known as, I think, a phase 2 and phase 3 hub for multi-regional clinical trials. But I know it's something that a lot of folks are looking at now as another source to get data quicker to de-risk assets. And I don't know if Caidya is seeing the same thing, the more interest in Korea trials as well.
Yes, we have office in Korea, and of course we are working on either multi-regional study and local studies.
Actually, can I just go back to that very interesting and entertaining fireside chat with Professor Cho? One of the things that was interesting, although I think that there's some competitive spirit among the hospitals here, but that was rather nice. But in terms of collaboration, because we think a lot about cross-border, he really was talking about, he's doing a lot of EGF receptor and other cancer research, and he was talking about having collaborations with professors in Israel at Sheba Hospital. And I think that is a really key thing for other places in Asia as well, but also Korea, to be creating these alliances around the world on the clinical trial structure or on the clinical front. So that was extremely interesting for me, not something that I actually had anticipated hearing.
Alliances, Simone? You're not really keeping up with geopolitics. That's sort of a very last century kind of thing. I'd like to turn to Ya-Ting now. Ya-Ting, you mentioned mindset differences was one of the themes that really resonated with you here. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, happy to do so. Based on the session I went yesterday, I think it's a capital market showcase. That was the second session I went yesterday. So the panelists talk about the mindset differences between the Western and then Asian investors, right? So I think the common was usually in the US, the investors are more sophisticated. We are seeing more healthcare specialists in the healthcare investment landscape. In contrast, for example, in Asia, we see there's a mix of generalists versus specialists. Right? And then if we're looking to the portfolio they are investing in, and you can definitely see that like in many Asian VC or PE firms, even they are focused on healthcare, but they are like really investing in like hospitals. Right? So this is very different from the investment thesis from the US-centric investors. Right? So I feel like that means the Asian investors could be more risk averse. And then I also talked to an investor from Hong Kong. So he is also looking into the later stage asset, like what we are doing, right? So for me, it's slightly eye-opening because, if you want to invest earlier, it's riskier, but the reward might be higher, right? But if the asset is very de-risked, of course, you need to pay premium for that, but the return, it's limited, right? So that surprised me slightly. And then I think the second topic was around the post-IPO obligations from the Hong Kong markets. Right, so when we talk to a lot of Chinese or Hong Kong companies, this is a topic that they often brought up because they need to fulfill certain obligations from their investors or from the government policies. So that means that will change how we structure the deal, right? So to be specific, a lot of time, they will not give up the Greater China rights. They want to keep it. So that means it make having a global deal very difficult because China right will be out, right, will be carved out. And then also, if we dive into the details, they want to be the marketing authorization holder. That means they are able to book the sales. So they can prove that they are creating the value, they are generating the revenue, so they are able to fulfill those obligations, right? And then as a BD person for a pharma, a lot of time we need to be flexible to change our deal structure if we really interested in the assets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Ruizhe, would you like to jump in there?
Sure. Yeah, I do agree with that, what Ya-Ting has said about the mindset differences. And also I heard from yesterday's session that there is a culture difference from the VC point of view. And one thing very important is to be in the culture to do the VC investment in different regions and countries. And one word inspires me a lot is that global diligence and local success, which is a very exciting statement.
Yeah, I think that that's been a thread. I think that the other angle on this thread, which is not really new, but still sort of had to be said, is that Korean companies at the other end, at the very early stages, they need to be thinking globally from the start, right? That there's not going to be a Korea market that is sufficient to justify it. And so, even though we see China companies being incredibly global, they have a completely different dynamic. That came actually through on the Synergies panel. And so this idea of thinking globally from the start is kind of interesting in light of the fact that when we looked at the deals, half of the deals are actually between companies in different parts of Asia. So it might be inside Korea or Korea, Japan. And I think in many cases, that is part of the global strategy. You start with that, you create value. Maybe you're combining technologies to create an asset or something like that. And that's part of your strategy for going global rather than immediately trying to commercialize or find a partner in the West.
And that was a point on the Japan panel that we just had. So some of the folks in the audience here perhaps heard that point, and it was, I think, Dr. Fujimoto of the Shonan Health Innovation Park. He kind of spoke to the different mindsets, but how that can work toward a synergy. And I suspect he kind of has a stand-up career separately, because he seemed to get a lot of laughs when he talked about how wonderfully Koreans, with their aggressiveness, could work with Japanese, who perhaps not known for that, and how this could be leveraged with Korean biotechs going to Japan as maybe an initial launching point, or bringing the entrepreneurial spirit of Korea, where we see many, many biotechs cropping up, and sort of this big pharma mindset of Japan, which after the US, Japan's big pharma has brought most of the blockbuster drugs to the world.
I think the other part that he mentioned was the number of Korean biotechs who have now set up shop in iPark. We were out at BioJapan last year and had a chance to visit there, and it's a really impressive facility there, huge campus. But the fact that there's now 8 or 10 Korean biotechs set up in the park.
Yeah, they said it was we were chatting at breakfast, and he said it was the second largest freestanding building in Japan after Narita Airport. Which it's not that
more biotechs, but less airplanes.
So I think what's going to be interesting to see is, we tend to think in terms of hubs and ecosystems in terms of bellwethers, right? We've talked about that in Europe, looking at, I don't know, maybe Genmab is a bellwether there now. Obviously, the China ecosystem has had a few bellwethers with B1 and I don't know, it's maybe Innovent one, something like that.
Yeah, becoming one. Yeah. Legend.
Yeah. Legend. Legend is...
Shout out to New Jersey, baby.
Shout out to New Jersey, right?
Yeah.
Legend. Okay, so we have a long-standing conversation, because Legend is actually headquartered in New Jersey, so do they get to call themselves Chinese? But everybody calls them Chinese, right? Yeah. So the main point here is, what is the trajectory and what is the timeline for Korea to start to create biotechs with that kind of gravitas, with that kind of ability and draw, that then what we've seen happen in these ecosystems is they do acquisitions or things get bought and they recycle the talent. And Korea is, I actually want to take a quote from Billy Cho from the Synergies panel, which he said, if you can solve for just 2 main bottlenecks, this could really be the beginning of a J curve, right? And his 2 bottlenecks were, of course, capital to value inflection. And the second thing was expertise in Korea for global clinical strategy. And so that might not be new when we think of lots of places around the world that have those challenges. But I think that that's a sort of a path that he certainly expects to see Korea sort of enter that J curve.
Yeah, I think the other thing, I think that's spot on, both from you, Simone, and Billy as well. But we're also starting to see deals that are opening eyes. Certainly not at the volume of China, but maybe earlier days. But we had Sang-Hoon Lee, CEO and founder of Able Bio, on our deal-making panel. He's had a couple of really, really big deals and a few other.
We've got Aurum Therapeutics here in the room.
We got SJ of Aurum here. We got a lot of our Korea biotech friends here. But I think the more deal flow you see like that, the more it is eye-opening in terms of numbers. It gives the whole ecosystem an opportunity to get more deals. It kind of validates the ecosystem. And I'd love to hear Merck's perspective on that, in terms of how much are you looking for deals now in Korea?
As a BD person, we are scouting all the innovative assets across the Asia and globally, right? But I wouldn't say, okay, we are only looking into assets from China or Korea only. So we look into everything. But I have to say, every time when I come to Korea, I'm really impressed by the novel therapies the company are producing or they are trying to develop, right? And then there are also a lot of emerging platforms. But every pharma always have a mandate to look for specific things. A lot of time, maybe this time we don't see a perfect asset which can fit into our current portfolio. But I'm really looking forward to more partnerships with the Korean biotech and then really learning more about the ecosystem here, right? Because I think I just talked to my sister this morning. She's sitting in Boston. She's a professor at Harvard. She says she has a lot of brilliant students coming from Korea. And I feel the same because I feel like the science, the science technology space here is so vibrant, right? And then people are very open-minded here. At the same time, they are also very hardworking. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure Korea will be, the next China. Show people time.
I thought, one of the highlights this week was the regional host plenary that Korea Bio put together, was moderated by Ruizhe, but was looking at sort of next generation biotech leaders and companies here, several of which I have to admit, I hadn't really known of before. Mm-hmm. And, the fact that we had some young leaders here on stage who were very passionate about company building and their science. I mean, that's really the future of what we're going to see in Korea, I think.
I totally agree, Josh. Can I just want to add something, and maybe you actually have some numbers, but one of the things that was really interesting to me, BioCentury was in China for a long time telling, this is where it's going to be, and the rest of the world was like, oh, wait, China, And what we've been trying to say for this conference is, don't be late to this party, as it were. And I certainly met during the last few days several VCs, some of whom from the West, from New York, from the US, from other places, who hadn't been to Korea before. This was coming. Another person who told me they were going to be coming back once a quarter. And so there is a sort of, I don't know if you have numbers on, people from the West who are sort of starting to find this region, but it's certainly a don't sleep on Korea kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, Simone. We were really happy to have some of our US and European VC friends out here this week. One comment I heard a couple of times, maybe phrased differently, but a couple of times it was a couple of the VCs being surprised at how sophisticated the presentations were on our company track, presenting company track, which, Jeff was the one that selected many of those companies. But the fact that the Korean biotechs, essentially they couldn't tell the difference between a Korea biotech presentation versus a US biotech presentation.
Mm-hmm. And we had the leaders of MNCs based here in Korea on stage, who all of them said their companies were just really investing more and more in Korea. So next big thing, it's going to be fun to watch.
The biotech version of K-pop, it's going to be like...
It's true. It's true.
Yeah. We'll have sort of K-pop Demon Hunters kind
K-pop
of thing.
K-pop Demon Hunters has taken the world, and I think someone said to you, Josh, K-pop took over the world, and K-Biotech is going to be even bigger. So I told that to my Korean father-in-law this morning, and he was he was pumped.
I hope we'll have the fashion to go with it. Do you think there'll be? Yeah, I think that'll be quite good.
I mean,
Could be a
just
fashion.
Yeah.
Could be a fashion.
yeah, right. Ruizhe, just right outside. There's all sorts of great Korean fashion right outside of our hotel here in Myeongdong.
Well, if you say that, I will go and investigate. But
Yeah,
yes,
you really should. And while you're at it, maybe stop at Olive Crush and pick up some, some makeup and nail polish.
You're telling me what I need? You're telling me?
No, I'm just saying that.
This is not going to end well, Jeff.
Yeah, I'm
Yes,
just saying that if you just so happen to have, a man in your life who cared about you and wanted to take you shopping, it would be a nice way to spend some time after working so hard at this conference.
I agree.
That's a decent recovery. Decent.
Yeah, that's
Close one there.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, all right. Well, I just want to thank Ruizhe and Ya-Ting for joining us here at the meeting, here on the podcast. Josh, as ever, for leading us on our conferences team. And Simone, as always, you're sort of my partner in crime on the podcast. And a big shout out to McKinsey for their wonderful presentation today. And BayHelix for partnering with us on yet another meeting. And of course, our Korean collaborators on this meeting. You've been listening to the BioCentury This Week podcast from Seoul, South Korea. Thanks for tuning in, and we will catch you next time.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
You were great.
Kendall Square Orchestra provides the music for BioCentury This Week. The group connects science and technology professionals and other members of the greater Boston community to collaborate, innovate, and inspire through music while supporting causes related to healthcare and education.